Good morning, second graders. It's Mrs. Quinn. I have a special guest with me today. I have my daughter Ava. She wanted to join for the video. If you remember back in the very beginning, I think Ava, you were in like a couple videos in the beginning, the first couple chapters, I think. So she wanted to join in today, so of course I said that's fine. When we had left off yesterday, remember all of the giants were being carried back from giant country. Each giant was tied up and hung beneath a helicopter. And they luckily made it back. And they got back just at dark. When it began to get dark, the helicopter switched on powerful searchlights and trained them on the galloping giant so as to keep him in sight. They flew right through the night and arrived in England just as dawn was breaking. So this chapter that we'll read today, it's a short one. It's called Feeding Time, which is kind of an interesting title, Feeding Time. I wonder who's eating and what they're eating. But they do have the giants, and it's now morning, so we'll have to kind of find out what they do with them. While the giants were being captured, a tremendous bustle and hustle was going on back home in England. Every earth digger and mechanical contrivance in the country had been mobilized to dig the colossal hole in which the 9 giants were to be permanently imprisoned. So basically, if you're wondering where are these giants going to go, they're going to dig this enormous hole in the ground and put the giants in there, and that's where they'll stay. 10,000 men and 10,000 machines worked ceaselessly through the night under powerful arc lights, and the massive task was completed only just in time. The hole itself was about twice the size of a football field and 500 feet deep. The walls were perpendicular, and engineers had calculated that there was no way a giant could escape once he was put in. Even if all 9 giants were to stand on each other's shoulders, and you know how tall they are, the topmost giant would still be some 50 feet from the top of the hole. This is almost reminding me of the mouse and the motorcycle. Remember when Ralph was in the bottom of the little trash can, and he stood on top of his motorcycle and he still couldn't reach the top? So even if all 9 giants stand on each other's shoulders, they still wouldn't be able to reach. So there's no way that they could get out. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters hovered over the massive pit. The giants, one by one, were lowered to the floor. But they were still trussed up, so still tied up. And now came the tricky business of releasing them from their bonds. Nobody wanted to go down and do this, because the moment a giant was freed, he would be sure to turn on the wretched person who had freed him and gobble him up. As usual, the BFG had the answer. I has told you before, he said, giants is never eating giants. So I is going down, and I shall untie them myself, before you can say Rack Jobinson. With thousands of fascinated spectators, including the Queen, peering down into the pit, the BFG was lowered on a rope. One by one, he released the giants. They stood up, stretched their stiffened limbs, and started leaping about in fury. So here is a picture of that enormous hole, and that's one of the giants being lowered inside. You can see how huge it is. And up here are all of the people just kind of watching. What do you think? Crazy, huh?
That's not really good, because then they'll eat you, whoever digged him up.
Yeah. Well, nobody will be going down there. Just the BFG is going to untie them. All right. Why is they putting us down here in this grub-sludging hole? They shouted at the BFG. Because you is guzzling human beings, the BFG answered. I is always wanting you not to do it, and you is never taking the titchiest bit of notice. In that case, the flesh lump eater bellowed, I think we is guzzling you instead. The BFG grabbed the dangling rope and was hoisted out of the pit just in time. So that's pretty bad. The giants even kind of threatened to eat the BFG. The great bulging sack he had brought back with him from giant country lay at the top of the pit. What's in there? The Queen asked him. Remember, the BFG and Sophia kind of went off and had a bag of something. They never really had shared what that was. Snozcumbers, he cried. This is the repulsant snozcumber, Magister, and that is all we is going to give these disgustive giants from now on. So all they have to eat now are snozcumbers, and we know that they don't like them. May I taste it? The queen asked. Don't, Magister, don't, cried the BFG. It is tasting of trog filth and pig swivel. With that, he tossed the snozcumber down to the giants below. That's your supper, he shouted. Have a munch on that. He fished out more snozcumbers from the sack and threw them down. The giants howled and cursed. The BFG laughed. It serves them right, left, and center, he said. So here's a picture. Have you heard this saying like, oh, it serves you right? He's saying it serves you right, left, and center. So here is, I'll show you. Here's the BFG with the huge snozcumber, and he's throwing it down into the pit. What will we feed them on when the snozcumbers are all used up? The queen asked him. They is never being used up, Magister, the BFG answered, smiling. I is also bringing in this sack a whole bungle of snozcumber plants, which I is giving, with your permission, to the royal gardener to put in the soil. Then we is having an everlasting supply of this repulsant food to feed those thirst-bloody giants on. What a clever fellow you are, the queen said. You are not very well educated, but you are really nobody's fool. I can see that. So she's saying even though he didn't go to school, he still knows a lot, and he is smart and clever. All right, so that's the end of that chapter, almost the end of the book. We just have just one last chapter left. I can't believe it. Just one. I'll tell you the title, but I don't really want to show you the picture. I don't want to give anything away. The title of this last chapter is called The Author. The Author. And it is a very, very, very short one. I think I'll probably still read it tomorrow. I know tomorrow is our Flexible Friday and all we have are just science and social studies. But it should be really short, and it might be good to just kind of end the chapter and end the book on a Friday. That way we're not kind of wondering over the weekend what's happening. I know I might be wondering. Will you be wondering? No? All right, bye. See you later. You want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye.